Good morning, AI enthusiasts, entrepreneurs, business owners. Welcome to episode 15 of the AI Advantage Show. We're your hosts, Colin Lepiscopo and the lovely Kim Reynolds. And we are excited today to talk about some of the big AI innovations coming in 2024. And to help us do that, who do we have, Kim?
So we're really super excited to have Christopher Brock back on the show. He did like I think our second episode and was a huge hit because he is so knowledgeable about everything AI. And so I was going to give this, great introduction about Chris, but the truth is he needs to let us know what he's up to because he's up to a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, what have you been up
what
to, Chris?
what are you up to, Chris? Besides your
Yeah,
huge,
tell us.
massive Facebook group of like 250,000 people
Right.
or
Well,
more.
looking back, I started the group December 17th of last year. And it was really because we were in a new era, I feel, this time last year. At least I brought along quite a community of people that now, sometime within the last year, they use generative AI for the first time. That time frame, I feel that I got so much completed between November 30th and December 17th when I founded the group that I knew this was going to be a ubiquitous technology and almost like a black swan event where uh, looking back, everybody will say we saw that coming, but I don't think anybody really understood the true impact of generative AI. So the last year has opened up so many doors for us. A little bit about my background. I've been an entrepreneur in the startup tech world for a long time, probably 15 years. I went to Stony Brook University on Long Island, graduated, sort of worked in tech for quite a while. My first sort of run into technology was social apps and ads, essentially on Facebook. I worked with a great team at App Addictive, and we ended up building Facebook fan page apps. And at that point, 2010 saw the remarkable growth of social media. Mobile phones hit with the iPhone and Android, and that was a big wave. Well, for me, seeing where AI hit last year, I just saw this as that next big wave, and probably a much bigger wave than what cloud computing, mobile phones, and social media were able to put together. So being an entrepreneur and a community builder over the last year, it's been a really interesting experience. We've been to the coolest conferences. We went to the AI conference out in San Francisco. We've been to Boston twice. We went to the MIT Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab 60th year celebration. That group's been doing AI and machine learning for 60 years at MIT. So that was fascinating. We also went out there for the AGI World Conference. Paul Baer, who sets that up, and his team at AGI Insights put together an amazing conference of true AI startups that are doing not just ChatGPT based AI, but AIs connected to weather or to building major brand reports or data analysis or biosciences. So really had this great opportunity to see the conference world and see the true entrepreneurs that are building tech businesses. For us, one of the big wins over the last year, I started working with a great team that works in the IoT space for complex facilities. And we added visualization and AI to this robust platform. So we were very fortunate that we were able to demo actionable IoT at the AI Summit in Quantico to the Marine Corps Systems Command. So that it's just been a very wild ride for us, knowing that the AI explosion happened in the last year, and we've really just tried to be at the forefront wherever we can, reading the news, but also being practitioners. So maybe that's not the best intro, but for me, it's been a very remarkable first year of generative AI.
I
Very
think
cool.
so too. Just for what we do, what Colin and I do in our business, everything has changed in the past year. The way
Yeah.
we approach problem solving, the way we approach fulfillment of deliverables to clients, everything has been revolutionized. I hate to use that word because it's just a cliche, but it's true.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, my entire workflow, I was telling Kim, I was like, man, I think we could have a whole training just on like mindset on how you can approach AI as like a partner and a tool and a, almost, we've had guests talk about this too, is it's another person in the room during a brainstorming session or all these things. And it kind of is now too. It's like, oh, it's the secretary in the meeting that's recording and transcripting. And, it's kind of everywhere now. And if you kind of embrace it, it's a really powerful tool for any professional.
Right. I think it automates so much of the mundane tasks that's an easy impact. Like using a solution that's like monitoring your conversation and summarizing it. That's so easily integrated into your business that was like, I think I started doing that in February. I would never want to do it any other way at this point, and I think that much value for that little bit of a cost, like, it even takes the burden off the person that used to take the notes in the meetings, and follow up. So I think it makes us even more efficient. And, it is this interesting time frame where AI can do things that traditionally a person was needed,
Well, and it allows us to be more present, because if you're not sitting there worrying about taking notes and not missing every little detail, you can actually
Yeah, very
engage
true.
with what's going on and being said. And I think it enhances our ability to interact with each other.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think
Well
that
said.
one of the things that we've sort of seen over the last year, people are starting to use AI. My group's ChatGPT for business and life. Business decisions, I think, are going to really come into play this year. I think last year, being that ChatGPT sort of landed in December, and maybe they heard it around the holidays a little bit about AI, but there was no true business use case that most people could embrace and understand until at least like sort of the first and second quarter of last year. And that's usually times when people don't have a budget to buy technology, and they needed to be a trailblazer and integrate technology in a way that no one else really has before and sort of own it. That I think now this first year, people are using it in their daily life, and now they're going to start, putting funding into AI projects that they can see being fruitful if they can, find the right tools to accomplish those AI sort of wants or needs.
Yeah. Do you foresee in 2024 businesses kind of being more open now to embracing AI and starting to kind of build that into the budget, starting to build teams and looking for the right tools to enhance their business and make it more efficient?
Yeah, I think so. I think that what I'm seeing at like the big business level, some of the big Fortune 100 companies, they needed guidance. There's a lot of concerns about like guardrails and safety and responsibility. And,
Sure.
there's this concept that if you're in like a CTO of a company, there's nobody gets fired for choosing Microsoft sort of approach. So
Right.
it looks like Microsoft really was very proactive about putting Copilot in their Office system. So I think that we're going to see that for sure, is that there's going to be an AI they can choose to turn to, and it'll be this Microsoft sort of umbrella. And I think we're going to start seeing the same thing probably with the Google space too, with Gemini, that
Right.
there's going to be two AIs that are just going to be in all businesses. And
Mhm.
then I think where people are going to get innovative in the business side is how to utilize some of these other AIs for either chatbots on your site or AI workflows or outcomes driven sort of AI. Those are going to be the ones I think that sort of emerge this coming year. So I think there is a budget, but depending upon, where you're at in the scheme, I think what's nice, a small startup maybe can say yes quicker and faster and implement more efficiently some of these tools to be able to
Yep.
rival, what a Fortune 100 is able to do, because they do have these bureaucracies and this like need for policy before they're able to budget it out. But if you're a small business, you may be able to really make a major impact, in this next 2024 before these other companies can even say yes.
Yeah.
Looking back on the past few weeks, there was the whole debacle with OpenAI and Sam Altman and all of that craziness. It was like AI drama, pretty exciting. But do you feel like that in some ways hurt OpenAI's reputation, or made them less seem less to be a forerunner? Because at the beginning of the year and middle of the year, everything was OpenAI, ChatGPT. And so now there's obviously more players and they're doing interesting things.
Yes. Well, I think that there's a lot of competition. The team at Google said there's no moats. These AI solutions are open source, which means anyone, if you had the capability, could utilize like a transformer AI model and spin up your own large language model. So anybody could do it. What gives OpenAI a major advantage for sure is they were the first mover in the market. Google had too much in place at the browser level, and Microsoft isn't very innovative. They purchase innovation. Facebook was doing some interesting things in the AI space, but they were really focused on the metaverse. And then a lot of the startup world was either focused on the metaverse or on the blockchain. And I think AI came in, and for really seasoned tech entrepreneurs, this is the most important technology in the last decade, easily, maybe the last 50 years. So with the explosion of AI and just where the market sort of was distributed, there's just not a lot of buy-in from the market anyway. Like it was just such a new thing. I think what we see with ChatGPT about their reputation, they didn't have anything to lose, so they were able to launch an AI model, and it used to break all the time. It still times out. But it was such a good product, they could afford to put it out there and get themselves out first. I feel that was a pretty good move. Now that Microsoft has developed a great relationship in their open AI ecosystem of a nonprofit and like a for-profit, and it's a very weird, interesting business organization that OpenAI runs. I don't think ChatGPT is going to be tarnished because they got the buy-in from Microsoft, the incumbent Office solution. So Microsoft said it will always use ChatGPT. I doubt they're going to build anything on their own at this point, because they were able to buy the market. Google's a direct competitor. It's not going to use ChatGPT natively. It's going to find Gemini for the DeepMind tool. So they're going to go competition towards each other. I think that was pretty easy to predict last year, and it's just figuring out which one runs what. I think Google has had some more difficulty in hosting their AI models than maybe Microsoft has. Significant to Google was their relationship with Claude. Claude, I think, was a very cool platform. I still think it's very cool. It was developed by some teams from OpenAI that started their new large language model to be more responsible. And I met Benjamin Mann this year. The same week he raised $4 billion. I got to meet him at the AI conference, so that was pretty cool. I think they have a good mission. They put all their infrastructure on Google's cloud, and from what I've read, this might need to be verified, but apparently Google could not host the Claude model, and AWS stepped in, and that's when Claude raised $4 billion and put their mission critical deployments on Amazon. So I think that there's some really interesting large language models that are sort of popping out. I wouldn't recommend anybody sort of build one on your own outside of like just fun right now, because it's such an expensive enterprise. But we're seeing some really cool open AI models that are coming out with ChatGPT 3 to 4, but we're also seeing some really cool open source models like Mistral that we just saw out of France, and the Llama models out of Facebook.
So so Google has Bard, which I use Bard a lot. But then they've also come out with they announced the Gemini and all of that. Can you kind of let everybody know what the difference is between the two? Because they seem to be there's confusion about the different models from Google.
So I don't really know the team that created Bard as well, but Bard became a part of the Google stack in the last year for sure, and investment from Google, and then just rolled into their product line. DeepMind, I do believe, is behind Gemini. I don't know if Gemini means two, and there's two supercomputers that trained each other, right? Like, I don't know how they necessarily like built or trained their model, but essentially Bard was the front end product, and they were able to push the Gemini model into Bard. So I think they're just sort of rolling it into the same product line, but the Gemini model will eventually be the core large language model that we see out of Google.
But then we'll
But
still
kind
interface with Bard. Bard will still be a thing. Or
I
do you
think
that would
it'll
be
be a
replaced?
thing until they change the name of.
Yeah.
Eventually, it's going to become like a Copilot brand, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Once people can figure out how to launch their Gemini in the vision that they have and tie in Bard, they're eventually going to figure out, okay, well, if it's X number per seat per month on Google, add AI to it for another 3 times your normal base rate. So how do you pay $50 a seat is what I would imagine, or something like that at Google, instead of what you're paying them now if you have the Google workspace. So if you have email, Google Docs, spreadsheets. And I think there's just going to be an AI upgrade that's going to sit natively over all of that Google stack, just like how you have on Microsoft and Copilot. And that's just the way that's going to be in there. Those companies got to make those decisions. And then, I think they're going to be fairly similar in capabilities, because these models are all built on open source technology. So there's nothing preventing either one from doing what the other is doing, other than the data that they own or have trained on.
Yeah, and there's one that you haven't mentioned, speaking of data sets, and that's Grok. And so that's what I'm curious, or what are your thoughts on Grok, which is fairly new, which is Elon Musk's, that's his XAI, and Grok's going to be trained on Twitter. So I don't know, maybe it's just going to send mean tweets all day. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it definitely could. I think it's always good to have competition with these AI models. In certain places, I'm concerned about guardrails because safety, and I think that Elon Musk also has that concern about, I don't know if you've ever heard of like chaos theory, but imagine a guardrail is putting a block on this large language model that may block what you're trying to block, but could hurt something that, could block something that's bad, but could block 50 things that are good, right? By that same sort of concept. So this idea of a chaos theory is that a butterfly could flap its wings in Brazil, but cause a tornado in Kansas. Okay, so like imagine you are a chemist and a scientist and brilliant. You need AI's help because you want to synthesize something for oncology. You're going to solve cancer, right? But because they put a guardrail on how to make cocaine, this was, I think, Elon Musk's example, how to make cocaine distribution, and like El Chapo, is that available with your model? In Grok, and one thing Elon Musk says is yes, I'm going to just answer it. The other models that are not open source are not going to answer that because they're now harmful. You probably could have asked ChatGPT that same question in December, but now of last year, but now December of this year, it won't even answer, right? And that's something called AI drift. And it's a concerning thing. Like, imagine you have this model that's trained on all the data of mankind. But now we say, well, you can't do Disney pictures. You can't do Norman Rockwell. You can't do Picasso. You can't do this. You can't do New York Times style. You can't do these stylings. You have now blocked something that, do people have access and ownership of their content? That's a question for sure. But they're considering this like safety. And it may be degrading the model or degrading the output. Maybe you need the Picassos and the Van Goghs and modern art and computer science to level up the world. But if you put guardrails on that, it may block the true power of AI. So I think that there's some big hurdles for Grok to be successful, but I think that it's great that he's putting it out there. I feel that Elon Musk 100% worked with NVIDIA to get the first supercomputer, to build vision models for Tesla, to create a company outside of his enterprise called Scale.ai that's used to train all the models with hundreds of thousands of workers in countries across the world, especially South Africa, which is interesting. That Elon Musk definitely built this industry. He gave $50 to $100 million to OpenAI So it's very unfair, I think, to agree with everything that Elon Musk's has said, because he's Elon Musk. Nobody is him. But to disregard, and I think we're seeing that a lot now, what his contribution is to the AI space is just not genuine. It's not like an authentic thing. Like, the person really he's creating space, electrified world. He's probably developed more things for energy efficiency and sustainability than anybody in the entire history of mankind. So I think he's getting a lot of pressure on his shoulders. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever want to have the type of pressures that someone like that has on their shoulders. But I think he produces really good products. And if Grok stays in its position of not putting all the guardrails on, for certain industries, that's going to be a better solution. Or Microsoft, in my opinion, who wants to monetize every penny out of any technology, will say, you're working in healthcare, you now pay us $10,000 a month for that month, or $30,000 or $100,000 a month. But then we don't have access. So you could be that same researcher trying to do oncology reporting, but you can't pay Microsoft this $30,000 cap a month for access to their API-enabled version for medical AI, where Grok could do it for $20 or $15 a month. So what's really fair in access? I think all those things are important. I definitely don't think the AI is coming to kill us yet. So I think it's more like real deal stories of this, like how do we understand safety and guardrails in a way that doesn't hurt more than it helps.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right, Chris. When you look at something like people are always going to pay for access, right? So if you gate something, right, like behind a giant paywall like that, where it's like, hey, here's the unfiltered, no guardrails version, and only certain people can pay for this. So now there's exclusivity to it. And that's one of the things that concerns me with some of the lobbyists, in Washington, things like that, where they're kind of saying, hey, in the best, for everybody, this is what's best. We need to put in these guardrails. But really what they're looking at is hey, I want to kind of monopolize my market share here, and then also have the ability to say that people can't have this and we have it. And that's what concerns me, is kind of holding back innovation. I think there's always going to be good actors and bad actors, and if we view AI as a tool, people can go, I guess, become drug lords with using AI if they want to, right? Because I guess that is a business. It's just, unfortunately, it's an illegal one that we don't want them doing. But so what are your thoughts on that, as just far as kind of regulations and kind of, if we dig into this a little bit more, what do you see happening in 2024?
Well, some of my concerns, and one of my goals, I would love to operate a data center with my own chipsets that I could understand end to end the whole product value chain, from software all the way down to the chip. I've been able to meet some really great chip makers this year, like NVIDIA, Cerebras, Kornami, Intel, and a few others that are just really phenomenal chips. So that's one thing. The other thing that I think about, though, is what will it cost me to be a hyperscaler? So typically that means you get your hardware, your computers, and you get enough telecom pipes of fiber going into a building and a redundancy electricity grid plan, and you turn on computers, and that's the cloud. You add a couple more of those data centers and you are the cloud, right? So this idea of hyperscalers is now what we're hearing about in lobbyists. So what I feel a hyperscaler could become is Microsoft, Google, AWS. You got some Vultrs or Linodes or IBM soft players. You have these players that can be hyperscalers. Well, how much does a permit cost to be a hyperscaler? How much tax is a hyperscaler going to have to assume in order to run the equipment? And why I bring this up is that, what if you wanted to compete in this market, but instead of a very expensive computer already, millions of dollars for some of these computers, $500,000 just to get sort of started with a base model, if you spend that type of money, what is the tax or permitting that lobbyists could put on this to jeopardize any type of competition outside of the Big Ten of AI hosts for data centers? So that's one thing I'm very much concerned about when you hear lobbyists. The big thing is that this was built on open source technology. And with it being open source, this may be one of the first times we've seen the government come in and regulate an open source license. And I don't know where that's going to pan out, but from my just open source ethos, I like open source tools. It's unfortunate if they can monopolize an open source tool by legislation.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
Oh, you're muted.
I'm on mute. I do that all the time. So this, I was thinking about something, and this kind of plays into, I think, what Colin believes in, not a conspiracy theory, but so it's kind of become the cool thing. All the cool kids do it. They vilify Elon Musk, right? And you think why he's the one who's basically started all of this. He's the one that's wanted it open source. He's the one that continues to give to keep things open and out of the government's hands, if you will. And then also you've got Sam Altman, where he got booted off the board after he announced that he wanted everybody to be able to create their own GPTs. And so do you think that this is like, what's my question? Like some plan to thwart open source and let the government just completely, and big business. And when I say government, I mean big tech with them, because
it's big,
they work hand in hand.
Big tech lobbyists, right? That's what we're really talking about. Yeah.
So Elon Musk has been around for a long time in the public sphere. I mean, he created PayPal with Peter Thiel, and
Oh yeah.
like, is anybody like a villain? Like, I mean, like anybody could have, depending upon the perspective you have of a person, like I think it can be painted any way possible. And we have news cycles that are only interesting if they're hype cycles, so we probably know a lot more about Elon Musk. I know a lot more about Jeff Bezos and his yachts and his girlfriend to be fiance. Like, I know about stuff that I really don't care enough to really follow, but that just permeates sort of this public consciousness. Yeah. Elon is definitely at that level. I mean, I feel that he bought Twitter at a deal that was incredibly bad. And, he just tried to take over a social network. He thought it was like a good idea. Can't say that he was wrong on trying it, but financially it was a major burden. As far as what he's done for SpaceX, I mean, like, that's incredible. Starlink is a phenomenal. I started using Starlink when they came out, and you can do mobile Wi-Fi anywhere. Totally amazing. So his car's the fastest car I've ever been in my life. So how, like, he's definitely done a lot, like, for society, for his businesses. Sam Altman, has, I think, a very strong background. I mean, he ran Y Combinator and Instacart and like all these other things, like a true visionary now to run OpenAI. I just don't think we know enough of his back history compared to Elon Musk. I mean, it's going to be very easy to vilify anybody. Bill Gates gets vilified. He was a very big shark when it came to business in the 90s. And, Copilot was a very sharky move. And his CEO that was able to architect that was great. Steve Jobs was sharky, and like dominant. So I think it's, sort of like living a real story in real time. I think Elon's getting the short end of the stick right now. Sam Altman, I mean, I think it was pretty crazy that his board attempted to kick him off the CEO role when they only created the most value of almost any company. And they've been around for 7 or 8 years. Let's say really they had a good 24 months and a really great 18 months and a phenomenal, not even 1 year. I mean, everything was based off of ChatGPT's growth in AI. So he created the most value probably of any company as quickly as any company in history. Reached 100 million people like in the first 30 days. The most ubiquitous software deployment of all time. I know Facebook and Threads tries to take that over, but I think turning someone onto Instagram to Threads was not the same onboarding as onto a new platform. So OpenAI for sure was just a rocket ship. And to kick Sam Altman off, I think it was more academic of a push probably than a business. Obviously it was, it's not even a question. The business at that value could have been disrupted and caused a major downfall in Silicon Valley. Whatever they were thinking to try to mediate a situation by getting rid of Sam was irresponsible. Like they also got rid of Elon Musk early on. That's why Elon built his. Maybe there's a history of no loyalty in the OpenAI ecosystem. And because of that, Microsoft came in to fund it and provide compute to be that chaperone of leadership and reliability and routine. But it was very sharky. I mean, like Microsoft took it over, where OpenAI had a chance probably to be the definitive solution. But they sold to Microsoft, and Microsoft stepped in to preserve the relationship, which I don't know. I think the world would have totally turned off in a very bad way to AI if they didn't bring Sam Altman back.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, I mean, you never really know the full story. I think some of the board members have come out and, you know, but it's so long after. I'm just like, well, that's been through a few filters, right? You know, so I don't think you'll ever, unless you're an insider, right? You know the true story, but it is, you know, just from an outside perspective and viewing that, you know, you're like, man, yeah, they really did have a shot to kind of be their own thing. They kind of blew it with that. And kind of a bummer, but we'll just have to see what happens. But do you think it opens the door for, I know it is very expensive to get into this game, but does it open the door for, you know, some other potential big players to come in? Like you said, Elon moved and started doing his own thing. He immediately, you know, pivoted, but obviously he has the resources for it. So,
well, I think the big deal is that like, there's foundational models and there's open source. ChatGPT, Claude, Bard, Gemini, Grok are foundational large language models that are, I would say, closed. We don't really know the data set that they're trained on. We're going to have open source ones like Llama, which I don't know if Meta meant to leak this solution, or that was in the game plan, or it leaked with all their weights and measures and stuff like that on how the AI's algorithm worked. But that's open source now, and it's a multimodal model and very strong. Falcon, you have several that are coming out in the open source realm. I think people will want to vectorize and understand the databases and the training material that's in them. I think too, we're probably going to have a reduction in model size in certain instances where you do not need to know every historical fact ever when you're changing an HVAC system in a building. So I think you're going to find AI models that are much leaner, and that's a little bit more long tail. I think all the companies are going to be on the long tail of the foundational models, and that's probably what we'll see. I wouldn't really encourage anybody to build a foundational model at this point and say, let's go after ChatGPT, unless you're so connected that you can find a couple $1 billion. You know, you shouldn't even start if you don't have $250 million. That seems like the basic entry point, and you're way behind. So I think it's really, how do you use the APIs to make workflows that better leverage these foundational models? And maybe there's solutions like Poe and Mind Studio by Dimitri Shapiro that allows you to switch out your models, maybe build a workflow, but tie in any model, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT. I really don't care. I want my workflow to sit here, and then I would switch in and out my large language models depending upon which suits me best.
yeah, and to be frank, that's kind of how Kim and I work right now. You know, we kind of have all of our language models, and we kind of pick and choose. Same with the generative AI for images. You know, like sometimes I'm going to use SDXL. I think they have a new one that just came out. I can't remember. It's really good too. I think it's based off at SDXL 1.0, but you know, kind of the same way. It's like, yeah, we're going to switch between different image generators as well, depending on what the use case is.
Sure. And there's some that I'm finding are just ready to go for businesses. I was really fortunate. I started working with a guy named Maurice Coffey. He is in the advertising ad age Hall of Fame. He's worked at Procter and Gamble for his career. Not to toot his horn for him, but he was a brand manager on Febreze and just major brands, the Swiffer. So he had this vision to put together the Nitro Boot Camp. It's designed for 30 minority-owned or women-owned businesses that could apply to an accelerator that accept 30 and provide technology stacks to them. We were able to provide all of the companies like Canva Pro, for AI, for marketing. We were able to give them a data dashboard system for real-time information, QuickBooks, and some basics. But our winner of the show for sure was CustomGPT.ai. Alden, the CEO of CustomGPT, I've got to really know over the last year and work together. And from that, we were able to turn on 60 chatbots, 2 for each business, in that one-day workshop, where the people were able to train the chatbots on their business and make their full front-end customer service chatbot ready to install on their site. We had one company install it on their site during the training. That's how revolutionary some of these tools are. Something that used to be extremely expensive, can be more beneficial, easier to set up and deployed quickly now. So I think we're seeing a lot more in the business side of tools, and it's really who will say yes first to embrace them. Where we're starting to see too in the AI workflow space. How can you put together, a lot of us have become really great prompt engineers this year and read how to prompt, and that's an important skill set. But how do you chain in prompts together and templates and build a complex workflow? I started working with a guy, founder Bach at Scripted App, and he's developed, in my opinion, one of the best AI workflow engines I've ever seen. Previously, he had some exits, but has also worked at Amazon Alexa as one of their heads in voice. And I just see the future through platforms like his, where you could create a voice trigger into Whisper and create a workflow. Or if you're a teacher, imagine scanning a document essay and grading it off of your rubric, or uploading your PDF and it creates all of your lessons plans for the week, all of your quizzes, all of your essay tests, and, set you up so that you can spend more time teaching than worrying about how to build a complex curriculum. So I think, over the last year, I've seen some tools that are now definitely market ready. And I think that for 2024 is what businesses should look at. ChatGPT or Claude are great. They create good content. But now how do you implement some AI to do some of the tasks that formerly took a person?
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely going to be the chatbots that do it. And Alden from Custom GPT, he's actually coming on the show January 9th. And I met him through you, so I have to thank you for that. And but I think that one of the biggest things is for businesses, like you said, to be able to figure out how to actually utilize workflows. And in that vein, you had mentioned was it scripted.ai?
Scripted .app.
.app.
SCRIPT.IT.app. I probably said that wrong, but scripted.app is where you can find that platform. And it's truly phenomenal what can be done and what's sort of on this horizon of stuff that's not outside of even being a small business owner or someone with a little bit of tech understanding to be able to build some complex things now. AI, I think, can code. I think we'll see that a lot this coming year too, is that we're going to see a lot of no code, low code solutions. And then the people that are coding heavy languages, they're probably going to supplement their work with AI as a refactoring tool or a co-pilot for sure, with GitHub. And you're going to see a lot of new software, I think, across the board being utilized in all businesses. And it's going to give a lot more accessibility because of the ease of use and the tool sets available.
Well, with us in our audience, we're all about AI, and obviously AI Advantage Show, and we love it. But in reality, it's not a huge uh, portion of the population that's using generative AI yet. Um, do you see that as being something that monumentally changes in 2024?
Well, that's a good question. Like I would say I'd hope more people use it, but I think more people are just going to use it within their life, and it's just going to be forced onto them. I know in the United States we have like a lot of baby boomers. I don't really think that if you're 60, you're going to start picking up tech today because you
Uh-huh.
didn't yet. But I do think that it's going to empower our I have 3 kids, so my children 10, 8, and 6. It's going to empower them in a way we've never thought possible. So I think we're going to see it from the youth side of first, like education, personalization, hopefully in education, collegiate sort of level age. Sort of early adults are going to wonder if they should stay with college or not and what the value is there. And I think the 30, 40, 50-year-olds that are running businesses and sort of making decisions, they're either going to lean into it or they could be put out of the competition by companies that start leveraging AI at a level because they're just going to be able to be quicker, leaner, faster, more efficient. Granted, AI is not all like the answer by any means, but it can get us to a level that from what I've heard, maybe Bill Gates said this. You can be 3 times better than most people in an industry. And that's usually like the highest tier of being better. You think of like LeBron James, maybe he's 3 times better than anybody on the court in the NBA. Maybe he's 5 times better than some, right? But he's not 50. Bill Gates said that software is the only place you can be 50 times more effective and impactful. So in that software realm. And he said that way before AI came about. So with AI, imagine that you're 3 times faster and it's a race against you. You're 3 times faster at doing mundane tasks. Now you're 5 times quicker. And the more that you could use it, imagine becoming a power user where you're 10 to 50 times more efficient than you were without AI. You're going to find that people that are leveraging AI at that sort of leveraged rate are just going to be more efficient, more impactful. They're going to be a generalist in a world of specialists. And whenever they need to specialize, they're going to be able to drill down into anything so quick. So there's a book that I got turned on to called Range that sort of spoke a little bit about that. But I think that there is this idea of range now that AI enablement as an assistant provides us. And I think it's, whether more people use it or not, I think it's going to be more in business, and will that cause like hyper growth of certain industries and monopolistic sort of runs? Really possibly. I don't think you can continue to go on the old way and go off the grid. I don't think that's like, the right approach if you want longevity in this new age. So it's a very interesting space.
Yeah, when and I know you've talked about that before, kind of 50xing your output, and I really do think you can measure the ROI of that, and it can happen really quick too. And I've got a great example as a friend of mine who he had been using, an AI. I think it was a GPT powered. It was like a custom one. It was through Masterclass. Actually, he's working on a course through that. They have kind of a, course creator coach kind of, persona that they got built in there, which is pretty cool. So he was using that. And he's like, yeah, it's giving me different answers than just basic Chat GPT 3.5, and I kind of was explaining this to him. So we built him out a persona that will write in his style, and he was able to do an entire talk that normally takes him, I think, about 14 hours to complete in about 30 minutes. And that was somebody who was brand new, who had never used this before. So what is that, like, 23x or something? I don't know, but it's a lot, right? It was a massive exponential improvement in his time investment. So when you look at numbers like that, I think the potential for some teams and some businesses is really powerful. And that was just with one basic tool, right?
Right. Well, we're starting to see, like, oh, I'm sorry, Kim.
No, go ahead, please.
That like 11 labs, like initially they only had 11 people, and they've now raised hundreds of millions in there. It's got a couple hundred probably now, but they were able to scale a business, and like that's sort of the push is like, will we see the first like 5-person billion-dollar company, and it's
true.
very possible if you train chatbots on certain things that you don't have to repeat back to, and then let that AI do what it's designed to do really well. It's not a person, it's a process fulfillment task. But if you could, if you look at your life as a timeline and you could say, well, that's 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, and gain that back over the next 20 years, that's what you can do right now with AI. And just a phenomenal thing you could do. If you have a team then that's leveraged that, sort of that Navy SEAL concept of how does 10 people go into a place and take 100 people? How can they 10x, themselves in that sort of space? I think you're going to see startups or tech companies that are able to be that distributed and that reliant upon AI.
Yeah.
You mentioned education, and I think that education is a really interesting area when it comes to AI, because right now there's this a big push among, I have kids that are in college and they're like, why am I even doing this? Why am I in college? And, and then if
not a bad question.
Well, it's a really good question. And colleges are going to have to change. Do you see it where businesses are going to finally get to the point where they realize that maybe that college degree isn't the best indicator of somebody's ability to be successful in a position? Maybe it's going to come down to more specialized testing. Like I know when I was working for an agency, they put me through a battery of tests, like hard tests to do with advertising and Facebook, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, do you think that that's kind of the future of employment as it relates to education?
It very well could be. I wanted to be a philosophy professor, like when I was in college, and then I got into tech, but that was my goal. I wanted to be in the academic realm. And there were a lot of things that I didn't really like about the academic realm. First, like they didn't teach me how to make any money. That wasn't even any part of any curriculum I went through, which was fine. I went there to like learn, and like I studied, full philosophy and other things, some stats and a few other small things. But I didn't really see at that time like where going to grad school or going for a doctorate really meant anything, unless I was going to be a medical doctor. Why? You could just do this with technology. What I'm seeing now, for sure, is I think that everybody should push themselves to learn. I think that that's never going to get old. Critical thinking is never going to get old. That's like an important concept. And being smarter than your AI should be something people should strive to continue to be. And I think we have that capability as people. What I do think, though, is like when I think it was a censure that I read, like is eliminating the need for college degrees. Turns out in society, social capital and emotional intelligence are worth more sometimes than knowledge. You might just be a nice person, and that's why people want to do business with you. And Accenture is probably figuring that out, that sometimes it's networks and approaches to life that are as valuable as, and inclusion and diversity and things like that all come into play, can all be very impactful. So getting a college degree, like I don't think we should ever stop like certifying learning, but I don't know if that's going to be where I'd push people. I got 3 kids. I'm thinking they probably should go to college, but I don't know until that time comes. And I'm definitely not going to advise them to become something that's redundant before they start.
Yeah.
Well, I think that education is going to have to change to focus on things like important things like the critical thinking and communication, basic written and oral communication. And, so Colin and I have talked about this before, about how I say, hey, the English majors, the communication majors these days are the ones that are really going to have the upper hand. Whereas it used to be, if you're in a fraternity, you were a marketing major. And
Yeah.
that's what I saw.
You might see, I've heard, great leaders, Andy Stanley comes to mind, who's talked about, he's spoken at the Global Leadership Network. He's spoken about, hey, you hire the person and then you can train them skills. And I think that works for some roles and some businesses. And then you've got people like Zuckerberg who are like, all right, you guys want a summer internship? Go ahead and try to hack this. And the first two people that can do it, right? I don't know how much truth there is to that stuff, but there might be something like that. It's like, hey, there's some things, hey, it's highly specialized. You have to show the skills to be able to get this role. You got to pass the test. And that's something you probably can't learn at a university. And then, as you said, the EQ, the emotional intelligence, and kind of building your actual network might be more valuable than a degree in a few years. Who knows?
Yeah. Now, on the personalized education side, I had a great talk this week with Dr. Brandon Donnelly from the University of Cambridge, and his concepts on education are phenomenal. And I built, like, one of my clients are like the Lincoln Heritage Trail, and Abraham Lincoln, great historical figure. We built a chatbot for President's Day last year, and they were a little afraid to launch it because at that same time, the news hype cycle was all of these chatbots are going off the rails and saying crazy stuff. We didn't want Abraham Lincoln saying anything inappropriate. So like, sort of had to quasi shelve it. But what I was talking to with Brandon earlier, I guess it was like last week, but what we were speaking about is like this future of education. Imagine, I have a six-year-old son that loves playing Madden and PlayStation, you name it. Imagine going through history, interacting with historical figures to teach you that will be compassionate and intensively your own, understand where you're at in your learning path. And whether you want to learn quantum physics or calculus or a new language or just some historical facts or how to do something in engineering, you can probably have that experience, and it can be gamified and it can be interesting. And I think we'll find out that you might not need 15 weeks to study the Civil War. Maybe you need a lot more than that, but maybe if you could compress it into a 10-hour video game, that maybe more kids could understand and take more facts away with that 10-hour of devoted learning than weeks or months or years of learnings. And I think the impact of non-playable characters being able to be generated with artificial intelligence, I can see it being just absolutely the future of education and a really cool sort of outcome.
Yeah, I think that would be huge for homeschool, for sure.
Oh,
yeah.
They'll be the first to probably adopt it. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that, like, so my daughter, and I don't know if I told this to you guys last time, but she plays piano. We were able to use the ChatGPT when it first came out to rewrite Mozart's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I first used it and said, okay, write something like John Lennon and Stevie Wonder and Billy Joel and mash it up and make it awesome. And it wrote the whole song and all the notes. And my daughter's like, Dad, I can't even play that. That's too complex. We brought it down to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and she wrote her own new composition and played it with AI. She played it for her piano teacher, and the lady about had a heart attack because my 10-year-old just created their own composition that was totally new, and it was, a very interesting experience. But it does take the value down of what is a composition. Is a composition like Mozart, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, going to go into the ether and last hundreds of years? Or is it going to be just little personalized things where my daughter was able to play something new for the people around her and it meant something, and there's no true cash value to it. And then maybe we have musicians and things like that are able to leverage it and create new music and new fans and new experiences, but I definitely think we're in a new realm of what is content worth, that's probably the biggest question we've seen out of 2023 And a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know. And a lot of people either overvalue it or undervalue it, and it's something that goes back to sort of the heart of what we had a discussion earlier. Our training data is what enables everything that we're able to do and utilize with AI. And if guardrails are put on top of copyrighted information, like, are we positioning our kids for the best future by blocking information and data that we just have as a civilization? It's a very interesting space.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But can you imagine if the teachers, like, okay, so you're teaching your kids how to use AI in unique and different ways. You're just doing it organically at home. But can you imagine if all the teachers in the school systems were had that kind of passion for it and could teach their students in that same way? I mean, I can't even imagine
Yeah.
how beneficial that would be and exciting, and school would be fun.
Yeah.
Well, I like
I
school
think
anyway, but yeah.
Colin's right about the homeschoolers. I think the parents that care, that'll spend some money for
Yep.
their education, because it's not free if you do it at home. You can choose your path, and if you choose wisely, and I don't know if it even exists yet, but if you choose wisely the AI driven approach, imagine you could have a kid that by 18 has almost a bachelor's degree because everything's online.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's amazing. And if it's just about information, we've seen
Yeah.
all these kids and these miraculous stories of a kid graduating at 16. That might happen all the time, but they're graduating
Regularly.
from college.
We kind of had a little discussion about that yesterday because my wife started looking into something. We have a 3-year-old, but she started looking into that, and he's really good at basketball. So who knows? I think he might just go into sports. But depending on where he lands with that, we're like, I was like, you can get most of this on YouTube. I'm like, I think she's like, I need homeschool. I'm like, I think it's all out there. But getting back just real quick, I know we're kind of almost out of time here, but what you were talking about content as being kind of the most important kind of currency, probably. I don't know if you said it that way, but that's kind of what I heard. And what's interesting about content, especially as we're talking about AI, and like there's already an enormous amount of content. There's an enormous amount of content constantly being generated, and that's going to happen even more. And what I've noticed, just had a conversation with a content creator this week about it, was there are people who create content, kind of just they're like farming views or whatever, right? It's the clickbait stuff, right? And that's the type of stuff that doesn't really work well. Sure, it might get the click, but it's not, it ends there. The relationship ends there. And the content that really lands and always does well and has longevity is the content that brings value. And it's created from and I'm getting a little philosophical here, but it's created from a place of genuinely wanting to help people and improve the world and make it a better place. That tends to be the content that rises and lasts. And so it's interesting to see what happens, because I think there's going to be a lot of companies just generating content and trying to kind of get traffic and hit their numbers. But I think the real, true, value-driven content that wants to make a positive impact is what's going to work well.
I think you're right. Like, and that's one of the reasons I really like the community and the growth that we've had. 250,000 members in our first year. I think it's awesome to have a community. I love your show and what you're doing to have a community that's just sharing and sort of learning as we do, and it's a community. I know I share a lot about my experience, obviously, in the group, but I'm really happy that we have some really core group members that share what they're doing as well. And we've sort of built this sort of tribe that, we try to elevate everybody, because we don't even know the impact that everyone can have. And though I love that you've invited me back, I think that I could produce enough content to keep anybody remotely interested for hours and hours every day. And I think that's another thing what I've liked about this community is like growing a community where you get a lot of different perspectives sort of in a melting pot sort of setup, where what resonates with some people maybe not resonates with everyone. And nobody's taking the burden saying, I have to be the content creator extraordinaire every day. I don't think if you're a business too, this makes it easier for content generation, but I'd never tell a real business that does a service They now need to be a broadcast journalist business and pump out
Mhm.
content every day. No one even wants to hear them that much about that.
No.
You know, they'd
No.
rather hear about,
No.
honestly, their story about being an entrepreneur, the story about, like, you know, their families, or
Yeah, the brand
because my
story, or
company,
Mhm.
you know, I found that there's a lot more communities, and maybe there's, like, you know, that online co-working sort of experience of like a hive mind that's, you know, I think really cool with what we're doing. And you know, I'm with you. I think it's hard to create content at a level of interest that, you know, if that's your goal, it's probably a bad one. And the algorithms don't like us
Yeah.
anyway. We want everybody to spend money on ads first, and then you got to
Yeah,
compete.
it's uphill. Yeah, it's uphill. But that's I've just seen Kim and I have encountered a lot of clients and businesses, and you know, they kind of think you can do those things. But yeah, I'm with you. The best stuff comes out of community. You know, it's like that's kind of where it starts, and then we're like, or the problem solving, and right, and that melting pot. It's really great where you get thousands of people together, and you problem solve, and you innovate, and then you share. And I think it's really powerful. It's really great what you're doing, Chris. I know we have to wrap up here. Kim, I don't know if you have any final questions, but we want to give you some time to throw some shout outs and definitely get people in your group. How can they get in?
Yeah, definitely take some time, because I could keep talking to you forever.
Yeah, we'll
so.
just keep asking you questions.
Yeah.
We got to wrap this up. So where can people find you? How can they join your group?
Okay, so you can find us at ChatGPT for Business and Life on Facebook. You can always follow me, Christopher Brock. I'm on a lot of the major channels, but Facebook's probably the easiest. Join us there, join a conversation, create some posts if you have some questions or are doing anything super interesting. We'd love to hear more. If you watch this show, like, we'll try to repost that too. So respond in the comments, and we'll see what we can do about answering anything that you may want answered. And hopefully I get invited back next year sometime to see what's going on for 24 and 25.
Absolutely.
You will definitely be invited back.
Yeah. Pleasure to have you here, Chris. Thank you so much for coming back. And yeah, we'll definitely have you next year, which is right around the corner. So
Yep.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy holiday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So fun to talk to. He's just such a wealth of knowledge and just genuinely kind person.
I know. And I have this vision in my head of this like awesome, you know, gamified whole world, like universe of where you can just go and, you know, learn everything. Like that I can't wait to see that, all powered by AI. Something like that would be, somebody needs to build that.
Yeah. Well, we
That
need
would
to
be
chat
awesome.
after the show, because I have some ideas.
I know. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. If you are listening to the podcast, as always, Kim, do you want to share some of our tools that we have for people?
Well, we do have the AI Tools Hub, where you can go, and it's a searchable database of different AI tools that you can use to make your business, your life more efficient, productive, make more money. So check that out. And yeah.
That's myaitools.co, right?
Yep, myaitools.co.
Great. And then we've also got the AI Prompt Exchange.
Another good one.
The AIpromptexchange.com. There's about 2,000 marketing prompts on there. You can join that community. You can give prompts. You can take prompts. You can vote for prompts and get your prompts, top rated prompts like those. Those are proven prompts that work well for marketing and businesses everywhere. So go ahead and check that out. Awesome.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. This has been awesome.
Thank you. And we will see you next week.
Yep.
Yes. Same time, same place. All right. Catch you guys later. Bye-bye.